Happy Friday. And as you can kind of tell, we're doing things a little different today. We are actually together
in person
in the same physical space. We have not done a bunch of this together since pre-COVID.
Yeah. In fact, when we put our background up, we realized that we hadn't put it up since February 2020.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Because the last time we used
26 months ago
was Boston.
Right? Boston. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun out in Boston. And today, our theme of the year is still bright spots and upstream. And as you can tell by our title, we want to dive into some legislation that was just brought to the General Assembly in Colorado earlier this week. And so Catherine and I thought it was really important let's look at the bright spots and all of those things that can come from this bill. And then let's talk about how this solves the upstream challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks to be a really fantastic bill with real focus on safety in the senior living space. Really excited to talk about it.
Yes, absolutely. But before we get that, let's kind of just recap a little bit. What is a bright spot, Catherine?
A bright spot is when you really take a focus on what is working rather than looking at something and saying, here's what's not working. If you think about the report card concept, we always focus on hey, my kid got an F. That's the one I'm going to go after and figure out what's wrong. But really taking a look at it and saying, my kid got an A in this class. So what is he or she doing in that class that is different than the other classes? And how can we do more of that? That's what a bright spot is.
And I think really with the upstream here is we want to make sure that this doesn't just put out the fire that's there today, right?
Right.
But can it prevent that fire from even happening? And I think when we're talking about aging, we've got to make sure that we're just not band-aiding this problem today and it doesn't create another problem down the road because we didn't go high enough up or further up that stream. Think of it as when we get a bunch of people at the bottom of the stream that just keep falling in. So we keep throwing them life jackets, right? Well, that's great. We're saving them. But why the heck are they jumping in the stream first? Or why are they in the stream? That's where we want to get to tackle these problems upstream, is stopping them from jumping in the stream before they need a life jacket.
Yeah. And oftentimes upstream thinking requires looking at something deeper than face value. So with that, I think let's dive in and learn more about the bill, share more about it, and look deeper into it.
But before we do that, Catherine wants to give a big thank you to the sponsors of this bill. So, Catherine.
Yes, thank you so much. Jesse Danielson, our state senator, Karen McCormick, our state representative, and Mary Young, state representative. We appreciate the work that you put into this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's look at it here. We want to talk about the safety. Obviously, safety is important, and we have to be mindful of how we balance safety and freedom.
We do. And I always represent the family side of things. So as a family member, that's one of the first things we think about is what's the reputation of the community if we're going to look at that community as a place for mom or dad. And where do I find that information and how do I get access to it? And what are the controls that are in place to ensure that the team there is keeping mom or dad safe?
Right. I think it comes back to the team, right?
Yeah.
Who is that team? How are they impacted by the environment that we're in? Things that we can do to help improve the quality for our team members and also for those who they serve, which are the residents or the older adults themselves. A couple things that I think are really big bright spots here it's just the way that the bill has been drafted to put the focus on those older adults. It's not it's not a focus maybe on one aspect of senior living itself, but they're really trying hard to put the emphasis on those who are aging. And my hope with this is, as they wrote this, they actually got input from older adults themselves.
Oh, I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think that's really,
family members.
Family members too. I think that's really important. As we're aging here, we're going to get more legislation. And I would stress to any of the representatives, make sure we throw a wide enough net to talk to the older adults. And to the family members.
And I would say to the people who own and operate the communities, because they know what is happening on the ground. And there are a lot of things that on the surface may seem super easy to fix. Right. But is legislation the right way to do it? I don't know. I have some questions. I think that this is amazing, but I do have some questions too.
So let's dive into it, and we can, kind of do our little yin and yang here of how we're trying to tackle this, focusing on, is this solving an upstream issue or just putting out the fire, and can we do more or look deeper, right? Into how we continue to improve this.
Right. Well, I think we both are aligned. We want to solve this problem. And so we're very well aligned with the representatives who did this.
Absolutely.
So, Francis, let me start by asking you, as an owner operator, how does this bill impact your operations? We should describe the bill.
Yeah, that would probably be helpful.
That would be nice for the people listening.
Yes. Skipping that step.
Yeah. So I can go through, I have the bill in front of me, and I'll just do a quick little summary. There are 3 sections to the bill, and the first one deals with involuntary discharge of residents from an assisted living residence. What does that actually mean?
Involuntary discharge. So there's current regulations, which are under Chapter 7 of the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. And what it is when a family member hasn't been, when a resident hasn't wanted to leave a community, and more of the community or the state of the condition of that resident is requiring a different type or level of care that residents might not be able to meet. So really, the objective of this terminology is making sure older adults are not at the wrong level of care, right? So as an example, if you have someone who likes to do walkabouts, I think it's a better term than elopement. I hate that term.
I like that you think about it that way.
I think it's very...
they're exploring.
So it's a walkabout where we know they need that secured front door, right? So they don't just walk and keep walking. An assisted living that isn't secured might not be a good spot for them. So that could be a reason that someone needs to do an involuntary discharge. Is there's been a drastic change in condition, and now they're just not safe in a non-secured environment. Nothing was wrong. The community didn't do anything wrong. This resident, as a progression of maybe a neurological disease, needs just a different type of environment.
Can I ask maybe a deeper version of that?
I expect nothing less.
What if you have, and I've seen this over and over, what if you have someone in memory care who becomes combative? And that is part of the disease. So it's not uncommon for this to happen. What do you do if you, as an owner operator, have to discharge that person from your community to keep the other people in your care safe?
Right. And this is where I think it is a challenge. And what I mean by that is because we have to get to the why of the behavior. If all we're going to do is keep discharging or moving or doing interventions that never actually go to the root, and the root could be, there could be a lot of reasons, but we have to start maybe with the high level, which is, how am I as a team member approaching this resident? Is it a time of day? We need to almost take a very analytical approach to saying, is there patterns in this? Is it certain time of day? Is it after a certain activity? Is it after a certain staff member? Is it after a certain meal? What is the why? Because obviously we can easily discharge back and forth, right? You can send to the hospital, and they can send to a skilled nursing, and they can send to a rehab, and then we create this revolving door. But I think what's really important about this is it takes the team. We can't be penal against a community that is really trying the best to serve these older adults that have these challenges, that have these outbursts, because it's part of who they are. So we also need communities that are willing to work with those that are challenging, because part of the concern is if we don't encourage that type of success for a community, they're not going to want to take on the opportunities of challenges where some of our adults, they just need that right environment and they will thrive.
That's fantastic.
It's the truth.
So it's getting to the why. Really getting to understanding what's causing that. Yeah. Well, let's talk about section 2, which is it requires the administrators. I'm looking through what is the important part to this one is
they're looking at the training and the education of the administrator, which every community in Colorado has to have a licensed administrator, And that is someone that has gone through the testing and the training requirements of the Colorado Department of Health. Again, Chapter 7. I will put that kind of link in the notes as to where I'm coming from with these regulations. But there are regulations in there currently that do require certain criteria for education, for work experience, for things like that. So I want to do a little deeper dive into this to see how I feel like we have a lot of this already in our regulations. So I just think it might be something that's been reinforced. And again, I think we have to balance it out too, because we have a lot of great people who never had formal education, but who are amazing. So I don't want to discredit that either, but I also want to make sure we do hold everybody to the proper and a high standard of care, but balancing that sometimes the best education is doing it for 15 years.
Yeah. Yes. Experience, right? I had someone say to me, TOP, time on planet.
Ooh,
just time doing what you're doing. And I would agree with you. Some of the best caregivers I know are people who have just been doing it since they're 15 years old, or, at any age, but maybe don't have formal training in it.
Yeah.
But that does not preclude the community administrator from ensuring that they get the training that they need.
Exactly. Right? So it's a balancing act here, I think, of, again, I think if you look at, Trip says hi.
Hi, Trip.
I think if we look at this bill right now, hi, Trippy. How are you? Daddy loves you. I think it's really, we have to blend it, right? Because as we've seen right now in aging, if we try to fit everybody into this certain sticky square when they're like a triangle or they're a circle,
right.
We've got to be mindful of how that impacts up and down, right? How does it impact the staff? How does it impact the residents? How does it impact the family, the grandkids, the providers, the medical doctors, the hospitals, the EDs and things like that? And I also think I don't want to short people that have that 15 years experience, that have this heart of gold, that are just able to do things that you would be, you're amazed at the way they give of themselves for the insurance that their patients, their clients, their older adults thrive.
Yeah, sometimes it's innate in people,
Correct.
Right? We know that there are some people who have been huge successes in the business world who only have a high school diploma.
Right.
So how do you read Section 2 in terms of the education requirements?
I'm not sure yet. I kind of need. I mean, I go back and forth on it because I think we have a lot of good stuff currently in the regulations that I'd like to say, well, let's look at maybe making sure we are already following the regs, right?
Yeah.
That's the first part. And I think too I still think we got to think outside the box a little bit, because I think right now in Colorado and many states, we're struggling, not necessarily with care, but with staffing, with encouraging people to go into this industry, with finding those individuals that we need to take a chance on. Again, we need to take a chance the right way. So I am not condoning anything, below
reckless,
board, or reckless. I think reckless is really good. But I think this could scare some people to wanting to get in the space, which is that solving what we want to solve globally. Now, maybe it does put out a fire here that we're going to prevent some people that should never have been in the space being it. Great. I think that's fantastic. But I also think we're not ever actually tackling the problem. We're just kind of band-aiding it.
What do you think the problem is that it's trying to tackle?
I don't think we got enough time. No.
High level.
No, I do think it is trying to hold people accountable.
Okay.
I really like this spirit of the bill of, look, we want people to be held accountable for those that they're serving, which I really think 99% of those who are in this space, they do that.
They do. And there's always bad apples, always bad actors in any industry. Yes.
I mean,
and this actually takes us to Section 3, which is about the violations.
Yeah.
So the way I read this is that there is currently a $2,000 cap on violations.
0 to 2,000 is basically is the range, depending on the
per
infraction.
Year, right?
I don't know.
Annual cap on the amount of fines.
Oh,
or is that per fine?
I thought it was per fine. But
okay,
I could be wrong.
So that's a clarification.
Double check that in the current regs.
So we'll clarify that. But there's a cap on that, saying that if I put my mom or dad into a community and they get fined for a violation, that right now $2,000 is the max they could get
no matter
fined.
it's no matter the size. So anywhere from a 3-bed, a 4-bed, 8-bed up to a 200-bed. It stays consistent no matter the size.
The size of the community. Okay. All right. That could really impact some smaller communities.
100%.
Then what I read is that cap is gone, but there's no schedule of fines. It's basically, I may be reading this wrong, so I'd love clarification. The way I'm reading it is there's no cap on the fines, and there's no schedule of fines based on the severity of what's happening. That's a little scary to me.
I think too, we have to look at this like this. I look at it like this. I think we have two objectives in this space. One, it's to coach and educate, right? To promote up, to lift up, right? We want our B's to become A's, our A's become A pluses, our C's to B's, our D's to C's, and so forth, right? So we have to have the right balance of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Again, I'm not removing the cap is what it is. I think that's not going to solve the issue, because right now the bigger issue is that if you do something, whether it's accidental or intentional, you're going to get some type of legal action. That's where you're going to get hit with the bigger issues, right? You're going to have general liability come in, punitive damage. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle is going to come after you in the legal court system, right? For whatever that is. And those are no longer fines.
That's legal action.
Exactly, legal action.
Yeah.
And so if we want to prevent that, I think we have to look at how do we coach someone that has a challenge here or a setback, or what is the why? Why did this occur? Not just that it did occur, but why are we seeing a pattern? Why is this occurring? And I think it's really important with this section is making sure it's uniform. Are we applying everything uniformly across the board? And this is where the challenge arises, Catherine, because you and I could walk into the same community and see things totally
very differently.
Different. So how do we create a rubric that we know that we're being judged equally and fairly, that it's not, again, we all have not bias isn't right, but just a different feel.
Yeah. And that serves everybody. That serves everybody to have that. And that's why I was kind of thinking, should there be a schedule based on severity? I like the rubric concept.
We do have a schedule right now. Okay. So their infractions are level A through E, E being the worst, E being the immediate jeopardy. But again, we have that out there, but how do we tie it together? Like what
be consistent
and be consistent? Because you can look through, current deficiencies and so forth, and they don't appear to be uniform in their application, which is human nature, right? It's hard it's hard.
It is.
It's hard.
It is. And sometimes it's the story that surrounds it. So what people are saying about what happened will influence the level of severity, regardless of what may have actually happened, the result of what happened.
Well, and I think too, one area that really jumped out at me on this that I think we need to really be mindful of is the potential for harm. Because remember Dr. Nathan Estrada, right? Yeah. He goes back to, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it, right? We are creating disabilities by bubble wrapping our older adults. And so how does that impact it, right? I want to look beyond that, saying everybody has the potential for harm, right? I mean, if I'm sitting in a chair and I fall over, right?
I mean, walking up the stairs here,
right?
I could have tripped and fall.
So I understand what the I guess the spirit of potential harm is, right? You're setting up an unsafe environment.
Yeah.
But I think honestly, some of our older adults deserve to take some risk.
Well, and within reason, I think, is something that I don't see in here, because the reasonability of it, of course, if you're an owner operator, you have a safe environment. Like, you don't have a baby at home without putting the little plugs in the plugs, right? So you take the precautions that are reasonable and normal and necessary without hindering your child's ability to learn to crawl or learn to stand
or climb up stairs. Mm-hmm. Stairs freak me out still, because we got a 17-month-old, but he needs to learn how to do it. So what do? We let him do it, and we're trying to be as close to him as possible. And sometimes he still does it on his own, and you're like, oh, I got to go over there.
Yep. And then you run over.
Over. So that's where I kind of, I want to not limit. I want it to be promoting positive encouragement for people that want to get in the space to shake it up, right? To really come back and push on on how we can improve it collectively and globally, right? Like we want to lift everybody up, but yet we just want to make sure that those that are kind of, we want to make sure that we prevent them from being in that whatever role it maybe isn't right for them, right? Because I think we have to lift people up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this bill is absolutely intended to do that. And I like everything in here. I wonder about the impact. Let's go back to section 1 where it's 30 days prior notice for an involuntary discharge. As a family member, I read this and I say, that's fantastic, because if they come to me and say, we can't have your dad here anymore, I still have time to go find another place.
But what if your dad's not safe?
Not safe where?
In that environment.
And that's my next question is, what is the unintended impact of this? Because the unintended impact, there's always unintended impact. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. So that's where I want to dig deeper and say, that gives me some breathing room, but what if my dad is combative and they're not able to solve it? Or what if he has an issue and they're not able to solve it with that level of care? You bet I'm going to scramble to find somebody else. But where am I going to find someone else to take my dad is the other thing.
Well, and I think that goes to what our objective is here, right? It's creating that care circle that we've talked so much about, right? But I think it's also acknowledging that there are these abrupt changing conditions that sometimes it could be because of an infection, because of a UTI, that we might only need a week solution, right? It might not be a permanent move, but now all of a sudden, if we need 30 days for that, people are going to start that process potentially earlier, maybe not, but maybe now they're going to jump the gun because they have to still figure out a solution for 30 days.
Yeah.
And then what is the financial impact? Like, are you all of a sudden going to say, hey, Catherine, your dad needs a private sitter now for 24 hours a day until we move him, and it's going to cost $38 an hour.
I've had that happen.
Right. So now all of a sudden you're at $918 a day, roughly, if I'm quick math. I think I'm close. $918 a day, which is almost well over $28,000 a month on top of whatever you're paying your current residents. So your bill could be somewhere in the 30s. Could be.
Right. It's possible.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not black and white, and but I do think we have to have a structure, right, of somehow making it a little more black and white. Like A is this, B is this, right? Like involuntary discharge is almost too broad of a stroke because I think it sets us back from what the objective is or the spirit of of the bill, right? I think we have to go back to the spirit of the bill, and that is to improve the way people age in Colorado. And I think that's really important to focus on that.
Agreed. And that's really what we are all about, is improving the way people age, including the people who are with them along the way. And that's the care teams who are employed in this industry. That's the family members and their friends and family. So what's your take on, after this discussion, what's your take on what the next steps might be for this bill?
I think it's getting a deeper dive into kind of some of the unknowns, right? I think
clarification on some of the wording,
on some things, on how we can make sure it's not going to have an unintended consequence, not necessarily a negative consequence or a positive, just unintended. And I think one of the big areas that I'd like to see is there a way to get maybe another department involved in this? Should we be looking at maybe getting, I don't know, the attorney generals with their detective team? I mean, is there things that we can do to expand some additional oversight that's outside of the health department, right? To maybe bring in a third party that might not have healthcare experience, but has investigative experience.
Interesting.
Or is there a way to create a rubric or a metric that we can now ensure things are more uniformly applied when it comes to violations and deficiencies and regulations? Like, really lay it out.
Yeah.
Take some of the human element out of it. Because again, if you're talking about setting arbitrary fines or penalties, that's really hard to prepare for.
It is.
And I'm fearful that you are going to, 1, discourage people from getting involved in this industry. 2, have people that say, I'm done. And we're going to lose beds. And we're already losing Medicaid beds because Medicaid funding isn't keeping up. So why do I want to take a chance on a low income when I now have some extra stressors potentially?
And these are things that impact the rising cost of senior care.
Right.
So that's something that I'm concerned about as a family member, just the overall rising cost, so that we can continue to get the correct, the proper supports for the people that we love.
Well, as a prime example, I think we all, thought home care was going to be a great gap filler, right?
Yeah.
But 38, I think last I heard average was 42 an hour in Denver Metro.
That's about what I'm seeing.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I mean, we were, put it this way, in 2010, our rates were between $16 and $18 an hour in 2010.
Okay.
So we have what?
Tripled. Quadrupled. If I can do my math this morning.
32,
almost
40,
quadrupled.
Yeah, like 3.2 times. Right?
Oh my gosh. The physics major has to get it right.
Yeah. But it's, I don't want people to think that. I think there are some really good bright spots here. I think that's what we have to focus on. Yeah. But now it's time to maybe mend it and improve it and add some clarification that you get bigger buy-in. Because I think when you read this, people are going to get apprehensive.
Do you think so?
I think the industry is going to be super apprehensive.
The industry will be apprehensive.
And I think initially, if I'm a family member, I think there's a lot of good things here on the surface.
Right. When I read it, I said, this is fantastic. Right. And then, of course, because I'm analytical, I want to say, okay, so what's the impact?
Right.
How does this impact the affordability, the quality of care, the availability of care?
And I think all of that can be achieved if there's more transparency and clarity to certain aspects, right? Really making it a more of a understanding of, if I do this, this happens. If I don't do this, this happens, right? Taking away that human element from a lot of the oversight and surveying.
Yeah.
Because that is where I think this will be many unintended consequences. If we can't remove that human element and it's not applied uniformly, as we all know, if it's gray, it's going to go to court, which we don't need any of these things being tied up in lawsuits. It doesn't help anybody and only raises the cost.
So what I'm hearing is you're really in favor of a bill like this with more clarity.
Yeah, with a lot more clarity and uniformity, especially in the application of surveys. Because I think that's where this can get gray. And it can't be gray when you're talking about people's livelihood, older adults. Because, I mean, think about it. If we have a community that has 100 older adults and this stuff happens and they shut down, how do you move 100 people?
Right. If there are no beds available.
But also, what did you do to their quality of life? Maybe they're super happy.
And what I know from my studies in this area is every time you move someone, they tend to degrade.
It depends on where they are in the aging process. Yeah. I mean, independent living to independent living might be a little different, right?
True.
But in your assisted living, you're spot on.
Yeah. Higher acuity, I should say.
Higher acuity, 100%.
Yeah.
Best
so it
case,
impacts their health.
Well, best case, it stays the same, right? That's the best. It doesn't get better. It doesn't get worse. But honestly, there's some dip.
There's a tend to.
Yeah, tend to be a dip. So,
yeah. Well, I think this is fascinating, and we'd love to hear from our audience what you think. We'll have a link to the bill in there. You probably already do. So take a look at it. Even if you just read the summary, get yourself familiar with it. Ask us questions, ask your representatives, your senators questions. And again, I really want to shout out to Jesse Danielson, Karen McCormick, and Mary Young. This is fabulous. And from a family perspective, I would love to get involved and see more of these kinds of things that help support the safety and security of our older adults, working with the industry as a whole and the owners, operators, and people who are doing this.
And I think it's equally as important. There's input and impact on both sides, right? For those that are serving the older adults and the older adults and their families themselves. And I hope this bill does one big thing,
which is
create collaboration between our legislators, our operators, and our families and the older adults themselves. I think too often we fail to understand the position of the other person. And a lot of that creates this unintended tension that doesn't need to exist. If we do what we did with our collaboration agent, right? You broke down some of those barriers.
Yeah.
This is not a time to create and draft bills in isolation because we need more of this stuff, right? We're only going to see more of this type of legislation. We have to get more than just a handful of people involved, not necessarily from the legislature, because I know that's kind of how you start bills, but I meant from the community as a whole. both from the older adults, those living with dementia, those living with other ailments, those not living with that stuff, but that are aging, the families, the grandkids, getting a comprehensive view of how we impact aging earlier for the betterment of everybody.
Agreed. Collaboration is at the core of what you and I do. Collaboration, communication, connectedness, and
The 3 C's.
The 3 C's and care, the 4 C's.
The 4
There we
Cs,
go.
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So it's been a pleasure to be in person today. It's a little weird.
Been great. It's fun. It's exciting. Do more of this.
Do more of this. So, but yes, we're going to put some links in the comment section as well as the bios. We'll link to the bill. We'll link to Chapter 7 regulations that are already out there for assisted livings in the state of Colorado. And then we really would like to have a discussion around this. Please send us messages. We are happy to foster a collaborative discussion, again, that is going to look at the bright spots and focus on how we improve the lives of those that are aging. So until next time, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the sunny weather we have in Colorado.
Yeah.
And like I said, thank you for listening, and we would love to hear feedback and comments.
Yep. Give us your feedback. We look forward to it.